In this video, I'd like to talk about the idea of the external influences we have on our supply chain and supply chain management. The reason we're looking at this is because we have to decide as a supply chain how we're going to respond to these influences that are kind of knocking on the four walls of our business. Are we proactive about it, reactive, or what? So I thought what I'd do is we jump over to the share screen real quick. I'd bring up my whiteboard, and what we would do there would be just to talk a little bit about what some of those influences are. One of the external influences certainly is the customer and the customer expectations. It feels like, doesn't feel like it's changed very much, but the customers basically are looking for what? More for less, more on time, and more on time in full. On time in full meaning paperwork's correct, packaging's correct, came at the right time you promised, right quantity, right item. So customer expectations continue to go up. And what was a order winner in the past, what got us the business, is now a minimal expectation today. And so it's now just a qualifier, and we have to go find some new customer order winners. Another one certainly is economic conditions can impact the supply chain. So certainly if we're going into in a recession or the economy starting to grow again, that can have an impact on the volume of the business we're doing. It could have an impact on the accessibility to labor and capital and all those things. So that could certainly impact us. Regulation, legislatively, either from local communities to countries to worldwide, will have an impact on our supply chain. A good couple examples here would be in the EU. They just came out with their directive last fall in 2022 on what their expectations were and requirements were as far as reporting on sustainability across, I think, probably a dozen different categories, and they expect it to impact 50. Oh, I think 50. I heard 50 to 90,000, but I think 50 is kind of where people are at nowadays. I thought I just saw that Germany is putting out some requirements regarding social responsibility in terms of impact on people. That's going to be coming out soon, so that's another impact. Political and social aspects. We're seeing everything there from increasing trade wars between countries, tensions between China and US and other countries, the impact the Ukraine-Russian war has had, societally, what's happening within communities, we see impacts that way, as well as global competition as well. So coming out of COVID, for example, many countries are looking to shrink their footprint in their supply chain from all around the world to making more of it more regional and local so they can respond quicker, as we're finding that our supply chains may perhaps have been a little too fragile and a little bit too much of a stretch. So these are some of the expectations that we're starting to see and changes that are out there. Now, why should that make us care about that? It's because we've got to have supply chains that support that and can compete successfully and effectively and efficiently and add value. So we need to keep our fingers on what's happening with those influences that are going on out there. And we also have to think, from an impact standpoint, and part of the why, of course, is that it's not so much a good or bad or a positive or negative as much as it's a proactive or reactive. And the natural reaction might be to say, hey, we're going to be proactive on all fronts, but you could make an argument for being reactive. Proactive would get you kind of first mover advantage out there, be the first one doing it and being able to set the pattern out there. But at the same time, you may decide to be reactive because you want to see how the marketplace shakes out, what the major players do, so you know how to respond to it. Might be just, I don't have the resources to do it, so I'm going to be a little bit more reactive and see what the marketplace is doing out there. The challenge, of course, with being reactive is we're a little bit later to the game, and so we could lose some ground that way. And a negative of the proactive would be we potentially could use our resources wrong. We think we know where we're going to play in terms of all these impacts. We make our play and we play in that area, and we find out we should have played somewhere else. So I think it's a proactive and a reactive with a good conversation and discussion back at work on which one we should do as well as why.